and they come in together so that persons can be heard. You have the facilitator, the offender, the supporter. Again, all the parties that are affected come into that conference. And then you have, once you have an agreement, you have your reintegration. So it's when the offenders can become active and a productive part of their community once more. They are empowered. They have a voice, and their voices are heard. The community is empowered. Even the offender is empowered because he too is being heard, or she is being heard. And the relationship, which is the most important thing, is being restored. So we ask the offenders as well, what happened? Because it's important to hear too, what happened? And what were you thinking when the incident took place? These are just some of the questions that we ask in the conference. And we ask the victims, how did you feel when the incident took place? So you realize that everybody's voice is heard. Everybody's opinion is taken into consideration. And we ask the supporters, what was your reaction when you heard about the incident? So every single person has a stake, and every single person's voice is heard. And that's how we build and restore the relationship. We also have, and why we use the circle, I said it before, everybody on the same line. We do not have a head or somebody in charge. Do you have any questions for me? I'm at the end of my presentation. Yes, I sped through some of it for time's sake, but do you have any questions that you would like to ask? If not, thank you so much for listening.
So I've been very observant of every attempt to pronounce the names correctly. You know, in the community where I'm from, everybody is brown or black, so we don't have to do much effort. So thank you, Mrs. Betancourt. And she rightfully mentioned the partnership and how important partnership is in RJ. And so the Ministry of Justice continues to strengthen its public-private partnership program. And in 2024, the RJ revised its policy to improve the National Restorative Justice Program. And so we revised the RJ Green Paper with plans to complete the White Paper. So at this time, I now invite the Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, to share more on how the implementation of this revised policy will improve the program's offering.
Thank you very much, moderators. The Honorable Ian Forbes, Custos Rotulorum for the parish of St. Andrew, Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Grace and Stuart McFarlane, members of the Ministry of Justice team. I want to welcome also our guest speaker, Mrs. Joan McDonnell. I have to tell you, our relationship goes very far back. She and I have been good friends when her son and my daughter were at Mona Prep, and they seemed to like one another, so we used to meet regularly. But they have now departed elsewhere. I want to thank all of you who are here this morning for this Restorative Justice Conference. I know many of you are learning for the first time about restorative justice, but most of you know about restorative justice, RJ as we say. Mrs. Sharon Betancourt just outlined the process, and you can see how involved the process is, how we empower the victim to be able to understand what the offender did, why maybe the offender did it, and hopefully to forgive the offender. But most importantly, how do we get the offender to admit that they did wrong, and therefore for the process to begin? I would like to say that this process of restorative justice is one of the most successful programs ever done in Jamaica. Interestingly enough, in 2011, when I was Minister of Justice for a brief period, and I learned about restorative justice being in the Ministry of Justice, I tried then to promote it, but unfortunately, I was out. But when I came back in 2016, it had not taken off. And I said, this process must take off. So in 2016, I got to ensure that we did some adjustment to a criminal justice act. But ever since, I've been meaning to have a separate bill, a Restorative Justice Act. And that is the reason why we put out the green paper. It has taken a little while to put out the green paper. And from the green paper, we have had many, many commendations about the process of restorative justice. And we're shortly to put a white paper to Cabinet and then to Parliament, with the hope that we will eventually have a good, strong Restorative Justice Act that would guide the process of restorative justice right across Jamaica. Many of you who are here are participants in the RJ process, and I know many of you are taking it into communities, in schools, and in churches. We have a process that has proven to repair broken relationships. And in Jamaica, we have so many relationships that have crashed, that needs to be repaired. And there's no better process to repair it and to restore it than restorative justice. Because one party can go to a pastor or to victim service and get comfort and consolation. But if you don't bring the other party who may have caused the harm to really sit in a circle and discuss how the relationship broke down, then the likelihood is that it cannot be repaired and restored. And that is why those of you who know me and see what I'm trying to do is to push restorative justice across every corner of Jamaica, because relationships oftentimes break down for the simplest of reasons. Oftentimes because of misinformation, misrepresentation, and sometimes misunderstanding of what the party really meant. Let's face it, in the homes, at least 1 in 4, I am told, there is an abusive relationship. Husband beating wife, or wife beating husband, or they just can't get along. Let's face it, I mean, as one who has been married for 47 years, it's not easy, someone has to give. And as a husband, I know usually if the husband don't give, it can't be repaired. So let us face it. Two persons or two parties interacting, whether in the bedroom, in the households, in the neighborhood, or in the office, or in the church, these relationships frequently break down. And you may think that everything is nice and dandy in the church or in the schools. Not true. Relationships between parties break down. Even the Ministry of Justice. I regularly have to say to Pace, why are those two people not getting along? And I have to beg Pace to bring them together and make sure that they can sort it out. Because in every setting, you have toxic relationship. Now, if these toxic relationships are to be healed, then there must be a process. And that is why I'm saying, look at what has been outlined to you by Mrs. Bettencourt. If persons could utilize the process, then so many of these toxic relationships could be repaired. And I know, and I see Mr. Troop here, he knows because we have worked in the schools, and we see how within the schools it has really repaired many of these little interactions between students, even between teachers. And we have seen how it has repaired relationships within the churches. And at these conferences, I listened to some of the testimonials. They're just amazing. 2 years ago, the bishop told me to keep repeating it. The bishop just explained in the church, it was at the Baptist church on the main Baptist church, he gave it on the boulevard. And he said, you know, he and his family are at war. He hasn't spoken this to his son for years. And then he heard about restorative justice. And the facilitator was able to get his son and himself to sit and talk. And after several sessions, not only did they hug up one another and cry on one another's shoulders, but every day they're talking 2-3 times per day. It is, when you listen to a testimonial like this is a bishop of a church, you know? And he comes every now and then, I don't know if he's here today, but he said he wants to tell people of the story repeatedly because it can be repeated amongst even the most charitable person. Because you need to be able to repair these relationships. And then last year at the Baptist Church in St. Ansby Priory, here again, this lady, she came up and she said she wanted to extol the virtues of these 2 restorative justice officers in St. Anne. They're here. And she said, she sat down with them. You remember? And she said, this is how she put it. When she and her husband got married, we were supposed to be one. But we were never one. We had arguments. We were always at loggerheads. Until they both came to the Restorative Justice Center. And the 2 officers, both of you are here, you're both here, who pulled them together. And she says, she could not believe it. She and her husband are now one. And you're going to get similar testimonials. I have given the incident where this sister killed her mother. Sorry, this woman killed her mother, and the sisters didn't want to have anything to do with her. She was sentenced, and I think she's still in custody. But she said she wanted to meet her sisters, to talk to her sisters. And we got the restorative justice officer to go and get them in a circle. And when she explained to her sisters what took place between she and her mother, and asked for forgiveness, the sisters were on one another's shoulders crying tears for hours. And the sisters now visit her regularly in custody and said, when you're out, we will take you back in the home. And that is why we want to go into the prisons, because there are many offenders there, you know, who want to tell their story, who really want forgiveness. And we're hoping that that can be done. But apart from that, there are many, many testimonials, and I've been asking the restorative justice officers and the field officers to put together all of these successful testimonials. Not only the successful ones, but the 1 in 4 that is not successful. Let us find out why it wasn't successful. So we not only detail the 4 and 5, because we have an 80% success rate, why they're successful, but also the ones that fail, why they fail, because you can learn from the failure. And so at this annual conference, we must move forward with vigor to know that we are in a particular process that is beneficial wherever it is used. But to find out how much more we can get persons in broken relationships to come forward. Have the courage. You can get together with your partner or with the other side and remove the anger, the rage, because if you don't heal the process, it could deteriorate. And oftentimes, especially in close relationships, it not only deteriorates, but parties feel that they must use further abuses and sometimes violence and contract killers to solve the problem. But they don't solve the problem. They get worse. And that is why we want restorative justice to be known and to be used across every level, every corner, every nook and cranny of Jamaica. Over the past year, we have entered into MOUs with the churches, with the schools, and only last week we entered into another MOU with Operation Star, with Keith Duncan, and we are going to go into these communities to see how we can assist these volatile, warring participants to repair relationships. But we want to be able to take restorative justice into the business place, even at every level in the schools. Mr. Troop, I have to be frank with you, I was disappointed yesterday when the Oberlin High School students were with me, and I asked them, how many of you have heard of restorative justice? Not one. But admittedly, they were in the 3rd or 4th forms. We have been catering to the older students. But we want to be able to cater to every classroom in every school. We have the restorative justice facilitators who can go into the schools and speak about restorative justice, just as Mrs. Bettencourt here has outlined, so that they can understand, which means all the high schools. We want the facilitators to go in and speak. We want facilitators to go into the business places, more in the churches, everywhere to speak about RJ. Because unless you know about RJ, you don't know how to use it. So we want it to be well known right across, every classroom, every church, so that people can not only know about it, but utilize it to heal broken relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, I can only repeat myself over and over. RJ is a successful process. The major challenge I have and we have at the Ministry of Justice and as a government, it is not used enough. Wherever it is used, it is 80% successful. Virtually all the matters that have been referred by the courts are successful. But we need more referrals, more engagement by the police, by communities, by families to get broken relationships repaired. And I'm hoping at this conference you will find and recommend ways and means how we can get this information across every corner of Jamaica. I wish you a very good conference. You're going to hear some testimonials. You're going to hear more about RJ. And I hope you all benefit from today's conference. Unfortunately, I can't be with you all day. I am still under pressure doing some other work at my office. But I wish you all a good conference. Thank you.
We have been listening, we've been listening to the various presentations. Let us now enjoy a lighter moment and listen to the story that the band has for us. That's the Jamaica Constabulary Force Band. was just beginning to rock to the move, you know. I was just getting in the groove, you know. You know, those of you who know me, you know that I love the literary and performing arts. And since my principal director is not sitting there now, I can tell you that I've been hiding. I'm whispering it, you hear? I've been hiding from her all this time, just so that she wouldn't call on me for one of those poems. But you see, the thing is, storytelling is a big part of the literary and performing arts. It's a big part of music, too. It's a big part of entertainment. It's even a more significant part of restorative justice, that story sharing. Yes? And as I think about storytelling, I remember, in fact, you've ever heard a Jamaican tell a story? No, okay, maybe you're not hearing me. You ever hear a Jamaican tell a story? Yes, quite impactful, quite catching, quite captivating, is it? And so I'm reminded of the poetry competition. Yes, that was down to 2, the finals, down to 2. A Harvard graduate, Mr. Troop, and a Jamaican Rastaman. And so they were given the word Timbuktu to make a poem. So, of course, the Harvard graduate stepped up. Men on camel, 2 by 2s, the caravan trekked, and the pause, you know, that kind of dramatic, yes. Men on camels 2 by 2, right through the desert, destination, Timbuktu. Of course, the audience wailed because, of course, oh my God, he used the word Timbuktu like that. So, you know, for a little Jamaican Rastaman, him just go up. Very authentic. Me and Tim are hunting went. Buck up some girls in our pop down tent. Them was 3 and we was 2. So I buck 1 and Tim buck 2. Story. Look at how it grabbed you. Look at how it grabbed you. And so we cannot talk about the transformation in restorative justice, you see, without, and we cannot boast the kind of healing it provides. Just as how every time minister takes to the stage to talk about restorative justice, he'll always share that one story. Today, he surprised us and he shared 2, right? And so we have with us one of our partners from Fight for Peace, Miss Michelle Harrison. She's a psychologist at the Fight for Peace, and she will share with us the stories, the impactful stories, the success stories that she has had with restorative justice. Make her welcome.
Morning, everyone. I'll keep my speech as short as my stature. So, Honorable Minister Delroy Chuck, Minister of Justice, Mrs. Grace Ann Stewart McFarlane, Permanent Secretary, Honorable Ian Forbes, Custos Rotolorium of St. Andrew, Mr. Richard Troop, Director of Safety and Security Unit in the Ministry of Education, Information and Youth, Joan MacDonald, our keynote speaker, Ms. Jamie Ann Chavans, Principal Director, Social Justice Division, Mrs. Sharon Betancourt, Acting Director, the Restorative Justice Branch, members of staff, other distinguished guests, representatives of the media, guests attending in person and online, good morning. So I am Michelle Harrison, psychologist with Fight for Peace, and we are an international NGO, and our mission is to support young people to achieve their full potential while promoting peace in our communities. Since 2016, we have been coordinating the Up Unity and Peace program in the communities of Denhamtown, Parade Gardens, and Trenchtown, using our 5-pillar methodology, which includes combat sports, education, employability, leadership, and youth support services. Our relationship with the Ministry of Justice, and specifically the Restorative Justice Branch, began in 2018 when members of our psychosocial support team were asked to sit in on the restorative justice circles as a way of providing additional support to both the victims and the offenders. And we began this at the Tivoli Gardens Restorative Justice Center. While our first introduction to the restorative justice program was brief, it was evident the dedication of RJ to promote more peaceful communities. The emphasis on cooperation and collaboration, as well as communication within an environment built on empathy and understanding, send a very clear message that mistakes and offenses don't have to be a full stop in the lives of young people. In June 2024, the relationship was formalized with the signing of an MOU between the Social Justice Division and Fight for Peace. Under this MOU, Fight for Peace has been providing capacity building support through training sessions in psychological first aid, safeguarding, and monitoring and evaluation and learning to staff within all 3 agencies under the Social Justice Division. Just a bit of information on the feedback, in particular from the restorative justice facilitators who have attended all 3 sessions. They want more, they're excited, and the energy of the facilitators is contagious. Under this MOU, the Restorative Justice Branch has also been facilitating a series of sensitizations for the parents and young people in the Up Unity and Peace program. While this project is only 6 months old, we at Fight for Peace are already seeing the positive impact. For the young people, they were able to gain a new perspective, especially as it relates to conflict resolution. They learned the importance of hearing each person's perspectives and making efforts to repair relationships, going beyond the cursory, "I'm sorry." For parents, they were happy to learn that support was available right there in the communities in which they lived. They also appreciated the non-judgmental approach to supporting young people who may have come in contact with the law. As the requests for sessions increase, I would like to tell the entire team to be encouraged that while the work is hard, the rewards are great. Congratulations on the work you have done and will continue to do as you strive to restore the peace, restore the love, and restore the kindness. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Harrison, for that wonderful story. You know, I too would want to share a story, but my community where I'm from, we are experts at Anansi stories, and I'm certain that's not what you want to hear today, right? Because the truth is that RJ is everything but Anansi story. It's really not a trick, right? They are really stories of restoration. It's about justice that heals, all right? And so it's now time for us to hear more about RJ. We'll be hearing from the keynote speaker, but before she comes, I will invite Ms. Vanessa Clark, the Director of Child Diversion, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Kindly allow me to adopt the protocol already established by our moderators. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Ms. Joan McDonald, JP. Ms. McDonald is a retired administrator and past branch director of Jamaica Red Cross. She is a public relations officer in several corporate entities. She's celebrating, do you want to guess how many years? She's celebrating 22 years as a Justice of the Peace for Kingston and served as a lay magistrate in the lay magistrate court for 8 years. A trained facilitator, she's now serving as personal development coach to institutions and at-risk youths. She was Miss Jamaica World in 1978. I looked at that twice. I was like, let me look again. But she was. A mother of 2 adult children and a devout Christian. Help me welcome Miss Joan MacDonald.
Our Honorable Minister of Justice, Delroy Chuck, has left, but I still would like to greet him because, yes, you heard, he is a very good friend from a very long time. However, we have our Honorable Ian Forbes, Custos Rotolorum for St. Andrew. We have Colonel Murphy Price. He's representing my Custos Rotolorum for Kingston. Stedman Fuller. Madam P.S. McFarlane, I know without you some things don't get done, so hail. Thank you so very much. Other special guests in attendance, Director Bettencourt, colleague Justices of the Peace, facilitators, stakeholders, or viewers online, good morning. In true pastoral style, my good friend, Mrs. Ava Nunes, and you know her, that's her over there. I need to point her out. Yeah. You know when I say that in certain places you mustn't point at anybody, but she's one of those you can point your fingers at. She laid hands on me because she's a pastor to be the keynote speaker just days ago, like day before yesterday. Yeah, it's true. I tell you no lie, day before yesterday. But this Restorative Justice Conference to which she invited me to speak under the theme, Justice Power, Restorative Power in Justice of the Peace in Jamaica. And she knows firsthand, and it's difficult to tell her no because she's my batchmate, and she simply knows how deeply invested I am in RJ from a long, long time. She knows full well the subject resonates with me. From my early years of exposure to RJ, even before I met her, the proposal to introduce this intervention mechanism in Jamaica's justice landscape, it seemed like something rooted in simple Bible principles. I had seen presentations of RJ at the Commonwealth Magistrate and Judges Conference with a group of us JPs went in 2004 to the Channel Islands, where judges and justices of the peace were excited about this new development in jurisdictions of Australia and Canada. The presentations painted a picture of cases being managed outside of the physical courthouse scenario that reaped mutual benefits. Having served in the Court of Petty Sessions, well, it's now the lay magistrate courts, for 8 years, I too became interested in this measure of success that they were talking about. And I wondered if such a thing could possibly work in Jamaica. I knew firsthand that many cases in the panel I served on in Petty Sessions were far from petty. They were serious enough that they could have been dealt with in a less intimidating setting as a courthouse. Somehow I felt I wasn't hearing all the facts, and more importantly, persons were telling us what they thought we wanted to hear in court. As a country, bringing two sides of warring factions to sit down, to discuss, to take responsibility for actions was never going to be an easy proposal. Never that possible to get communities to buy into this new way of healing through talk and action. The then Minister of Justice, Dorothy Lightburn, pressed for us to present ourselves everywhere there are pockets of disturbance or not, and our sessions were held all over Jamaica about restorative justice in some places as Granville, Maypen, Spanish Town. Later, under this indefatigable leader that we have, our Honorable Minister, we saw Tower Hill come to life, which is where Pastor Derek Coward, we are of that batch and that ilk, where Tower Hill was where the ministry sent us. It wasn't pretty, don't it? But it turned out to be beautiful. We adjusted very quickly because we saw the need for the work and the establishment of a center that people to come to discuss things, to set up not only the administrative locale, but to say to the people, restorative justice has come to you. It's not something you hear about on the radio. It's right here. And you have a place that you can come to talk about what is going to happen for the benefit of all. The cases were to be adjudicated there. And so, again, outside of a courthouse setting, people felt, okay, let me go up there and see. And we see people who we know, so good. We see people who we offended, so good. Let me tell somebody else what she did say about me. So we are in the middle, and we made it very, very possible that the circle that we were going to form was to hear all sides, to be non-judgmental, and to make sure that at the end of the day, we are responsible for our shared humanity. Later on, the establishment of RJ centers in Tivoli Gardens, Denham Town, Greenwich Town, proved imperative if the scale to balance justice could be owned by the people alongside the police, churches, schools, and local NGOs, like down in Rosetown, kind of like Rosetown. Centers in the brochures that you can see that are presented to us in our folders this morning, we're all over Jamaica now through the peace centers. So nobody can say, me no know, me never hear about it. That's not quite true. Yesterday, I had the good fortune of breaking bread with some of these hardworking facilitators. And again, I was proud that more than ever, they are putting in the work necessary for RJ to be sustained. We know for sure that justice at its core is not just about retribution, but about healing, restoring, and building the bonds that unite us as a people. Our beautiful country, Jamaica, like many nations, has experienced historical share of pain and historical injustices and contemporary challenges. These wounds, however, that are left and scars, but they are not beyond repair. The path to healing lies in justice that not only addresses the wrongs, but acknowledges our shared humanity. Restorative justice encourages dialogue, empathy, and understanding. It is about giving victims a voice, allowing offenders a chance to make amends, and fostering communities of trust in our justice system, accountability, and reconciliation. We have that in Jamaica. There is one aspect of living and serving RJ, however, and Minister alluded to it, and we just heard someone mentioned it, and it's true, it is quite true, and this is something that has always kind of bothered me, that we hardly ever hear the testimonies of those who have been through the process and can claim the process as success. In sharing the journey, individuals are walking advertisements and will encourage others to follow. When we hear the loud cries of, "We want justice," we must be just as loud when we say, "We will be responsible." In true Jamaicanese, and again, our Madam MC just alluded to something like that, we have a way of speaking in Jamaica that is really something. Sometimes we know we are not supposed to be taping any of these sessions. They're not to be recorded. But sometimes I feel, Lord, let somebody like Steven Spielberg be a fly on the wall. Did you get that? So did you hear what this had? Because the way we express our agony, the way we express how somebody hurt, and the way we express how we actually, truthfully, did hurt somebody, that is to be documented. It doesn't get, that movie don't make it. Because we speak fluent Jamaicanese. But you know, it is to me when we continue to allow this kind of RJ intimacy. And I call it intimacy into me see. Because whatever it is that you're sharing, actually sometimes when you're talking, boy, Joan, I think I see you in there, you know. Mm-hmm. What she just said a while ago is really you. And what she did and what him did do, I sound like my brother Tony right off the bat. So it's a kind of intimacy. It allows this circle of intimacy where we're actually having a mirror held up to see what we are seeing, listen, to respect, to empathize, to repent, and to forgive. Again, these are biblical principles, and it comes out so much like heavy coconut cream in RJ when you listen to these sessions. So, continue to work, my friends. Congratulations to the minister, to our facilitators, our guidance counselors, and dean of disciplines. We have the restorative power of justice in our hands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Joan MacDonald, JP. You have given us an insight into how RJ is impacting, or further insight, I should say, of how RJ is impacting our communities. And I'm sure, just like Miss MacDonald, just like Miss Harrison, just like the many users of RJ, the many beneficiaries of RJ, you too have a story. We have reached a critical segment in our program today. We're going to be doing our first panel discussion. We're going to be having our first panel discussion. On your program, you will see panel discussion 1. But we're going to switch it around a little bit. That's the thing with RJ, you see? There's always surprises, but they're good surprises. And so we're going to be having our second panel discussion first, and our first at the second. So help me welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for the first panel discussion, which is entitled Restorative Justice in Schools, Creating Safe Learning Environments. You'd be aware that we currently have a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education, where we're offering restorative practices in schools. That's a 2-day training, right, Mr. Troop, of our students, our teachers, and parents alike. And this panel discussion will allow us to understand how it has been impacting the schools. We will be speaking to 3 panelists, and they will share with us their experience as well. Help me welcome our panelists. Our first, hold their applauses. Our first, Mr. Richard Troop, Director, Safety and Security Ministry, or in the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. Mr. Richard Troop, join me, please. And we also have Mr. Derek Coward, Senior Facilitator within the Restorative Justice Branch. Clap him, man. Yes. Now you can let go the applauses. And we also have Mr. Stuart Jacobs, President of the National Parenting Association Committee. Join us, please. And earlier I was searching for my counterpart, you see? I'm a church girl. And they say that when you knew what happened when Eve strayed from Adam. And I was looking across and were wondering, where's Adam? But he's here now. Let us welcome him and let's join in. And together we will go through the panel discussion, the title, Restorative Justice in Schools, Creating Safe Learning Environments. All right, so while they remove the podium, so we have clear vision of our panelists. So welcome, panelists. Gentlemen, it's lovely to have the gentlemen. Oh, I feel so blessed. The rose among the gentlemen. I won't say thorns. Yes. And so we spoke about restorative justice. Have you shift to me a little? Yes, just so I can look into the handsome face. All right, and maintain the eye contact. And that's something we do in restorative justice in our story sharing, you see? As we facilitate, we maintain the eye contact. And so we're talking about restorative justice in schools, creating safe environments. Could you, Mr. Troop, let me start with you as Director of Safety and Security. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about restorative practices in schools.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I stand on the protocol already established. Let me just put some things in context. You know, many of you here are parents. The majority of our nation's children, they go to school to learn. They are doing well. They want to make you proud as parents. They want to make themselves proud. They want to capitalize on your investment in their education. Of course, as Jamaicans, we are aware that the violence we're seeing in our communities, in our homes, have been reflecting in our. The partnership with restorative justice is critical, has been critical for a number of reasons. Colleagues, our children come to school, many of them are hurting. Many are hungry. They can't maximize the teaching and learning opportunity because of this lived experiences that they're carrying. And when you listen to what transpired yesterday, it's a classical example. 14-year-old girl at home, in her house. It is alleged that a man of unsound mind came into the house, brutally raped her, beat her with a hammer, and she is dead. Think about the trauma of the family. Think about other siblings of that family and probably other families who come to school hurting. RJ, the value of RJ to us and to our schools is that sometimes when we see a particular behavior and we say them rude and them bad, it is issues that trigger the behavior. RJ and the partnership with the Ministry of Justice is allowing us to really interface with our children in a deeper and a more purposeful way. So, in 3 ways. 1, earlier we spoke of the 2 days restorative practices training in our schools. Close to 500 schools impacted. Over 12,000 persons impacted. Students, teachers, parents impacted by this intervention. Under the recent memorandum we signed again, this is the second memorandum of understanding. RJ facilitators are providing an opportunity where children are able to encircle, resolve their conflicts. We have been saying to school, suspensions and expulsions don't change the behavior, but you create a space for the children to work through their differences, and it makes a difference. The other thing that we're doing, partnership with RJ, and our minister spoke of it earlier, it can't be just for some children. It must be for all. And so there is the Justice Tour, where a day is spent in school and the entire school population is sensitized. But I put a caution to all of us. It is a process. It will take time. We have to believe that it will take time. We have to acknowledge and signal where we're seeing it is making a difference. And I want to sit here today facing you to let you know RJ and the services provided has been making a profound difference. Trauma management care, when our children who are so traumatized by the violence, we can rest assured that our RJ facilitators, representatives from the Victim Service Division, will support our guidance counselors to support the children and families directly impacted at the school community. Give RJ a round of applause for the excellent work it is doing and will continue to do.
So thank you, Mr. Troop. And you touched on a point that is very important, and I figure that each member of the panel would like to comment on this. You spoke to issues of behavioral issues may lie in some more foundational issues that are triggering these behavioral issues. So the question is, what role do you think parents play or should play in alleviating these issues or in enforcing RJ, ensuring that it is much more effective than it already is?
And that's for me again?
Yes, I do want you to answer as well, but I figure that Mr. Jacobs would also love to chime in on this.
I grew up in an inner city community, and my grandmother would always say, home is the first place of influence. And so as parents, and I'm saying to parents, we have a lot of things to do at home. We have to make sure we are inculcating the kind of values for our children to grow, to develop, and to find their purpose. We have to ensure that as adults, and this is the thing now, we can't just say what children ought to be doing. We have to demonstrate that in our very lives. And so how we as parents and adults manage conflict situations at home is going to be critical. And so it is also recognizing that parents too also need help, because parents are hurting too. And so it's not just hard, Jay, for children, but it's for anybody, including parents. And so parents have been responding to the sessions. They have been coming out. And parents have been telling their testimonies too. Parents is seeing that there's a difference in their child's behavior, and we encourage parents, when they're seeing that difference, replicate what the children would have been exposed to at school in the RJ session, at home in how they are parenting their children. But the values is very important. The sense of honesty and trust and love and kindness. These are things that can be instilled in our children irrespective of our economic position in life. And we encourage our families to recognize the importance of these values so that our children can be so guided.
Let me say a pleasant morning to everyone. I'm indeed happy to be here to share. It is said that home is the first place of socialization, and home is where everything begins. And then it moves from the home maybe to the church, because it moved from the church then to the school, because the child is christened or blessed at he or she is born. Now, parents have a very crucial role to play at all times. It is often said that children live what they learn and learn what they live. Now, when a child is socialized in a certain way, he or she brings that kind of maladaptive behavior into the schools. And unfortunately, it affects his or her peers. It affects the teachers, the staff, both auxiliary and the academic staff. And many times I've been privileged, Mr. Moderator, to go into the schools and do some of the training among the teachers and the students. And I must confess that they do gravitate towards it. And in these sessions, we also have parents who come out and show their appreciation. Now, when a child comes to school and he or she had not having breakfast and in the school, that child cannot learn. And it's not that the child is rude or want to behave in a negative way. However, when he or she see their peers acting in a certain way, and the teacher might think that the child is defiant, when in truth and in fact, his or her stomach is empty. So there need to be some social intervention where, I say in the training, sir, in the training, I say to the participants, the students, the teachers, and the parents, it is good to have what is called a check-in. If you start a check-in in the morning, on a Monday morning, if you say, everyone tell us what was your activity during the weekend, you'll find that that child didn't get to sleep because of the quote-unquote music. They call it music. The loud noise. Sometimes it is gunshot being fired. And you'll find that that child coming to school, unable to sleep, unable to study, and coming with an empty stomach, then he or she will act it out in the classroom. And sometimes they take that negative behavior out on the teacher when the teacher is trying to disseminate the correct information. But they take out those negative behavior that they experience upon their peers and upon their teacher, unfortunately. So one, the parents need to set the right example. Parents have a crucial role to play. And I see that parents are gravitating towards restorative justice. And in closing, sir, what needs to happen is that we should have more restorative practices. And is the preventative measure for the restorative justice stage. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. At birth, when that umbilical cord is cut and that child comes into being, we become teachers automatically as parents. And our children will mirror and assimilate what they learn from us. That's what happens. So parents, a lot of parents need restorative justice exposure because when it's not happening, our children, unfortunately, grow up not experiencing that. They migrate this behavior into schools. And in migrating this behavior into school, then we have the problem because that child is then will become disruptive to others around. And children are impressionable, and they will begin to morph that behavior to others around them. And so society becomes this mushrooming of wanting to deal with the issues that exist. And so it makes restorative intervention so important now. But if we can find the ways through the different modes of communication in schools where you tap into parents and children at the same time, then you find that you'll be able to fix a generation coming out. And that is where I would love for us to look at the issues of it in schools. That it's not just a prescription, but a prevention process. Parents, and I'm speaking on behalf of the 750,000 parents in Jamaica, where we say school as value added. That's where we send our children to come out better than we are at any given time in our lives. We want our children to be better. So when we are 18 and just going to the work world, we don't want our children to start at entry level. We want them to start mid and upper level into any part of society. And so if we are going to send our children to school, we want to ensure that they are in a safe environment. They're in an environment where they're coming home to us in one piece, and they're coming home to us able to mitigate against what it is that they're exposed to in society. And society here is not just the physical, it is the social media, it is the music, it is all the exposures that they get on the public transport to and from. And so restorative justice must become a part of our psyche. It must not just be a practice. We should try and extrapolate from it some philosophies that become a part of the curriculum that we learn on a daily basis. When a child enters primary school, high school, ECI, that some part of that philosophy is learned. We must remember that patience is the companion of wisdom. If we are patient with the ECIs and take them right to second and expose them, then for certain, restorative justice, I think, would be on its way, working as it is now, even better.
Thank you so very much. Now, considering the loaded curriculum, yes, within schools, Mr. Troop and Mr. Jacobs, how can RJ principles be integrated in the teacher training and professional development, just so as to ensure that the staff are equipped to handle the conflicts constructively? We also understand that school violence is on a rise. It's becoming a grave issue nationally. So how can we ensure the sustainability? How can we ensure that staff members, staff and teachers are equipped to handle those through RJ?
I think the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information has recognized the importance of the shift in prioritizing, where we look at the delivery of education. It's not just the academic performance of our children that we should be concerned about as a ministry, but also too as parents. No, we are to be placing, and we have been placing, greater emphasis or not equal emphasis on character building, on social and emotional learning. The HFLE curriculum underscores a lot of the principles or the thematic areas under RJ. So there are things that are happening on the ground we just need to give greater attention to. The point you raised about the teacher training institution is critical. Perhaps int. That's another place where our MOU needs to sign, where we look at the many teacher training institutions that are around and introduce the concept of restorative practices as a course, so that we are not waiting for them to come to school to be exposed, but it's a part of their training and certification. I think that might be a strategic partnership to explore moving forward. And so we have our homework is there for us to do. The beauty of balancing that with the emphasis of students, I don't want you to miss. You ever hear people say some people set in them ways? A so we stay. It in our DNA. And so, again, the earlier the intervention, it's the more meaningful and purposeful it is. Perhaps having said that then, because our early childhood institution work with our children from very early. And I know the Early Childhood Commission, you would have done some work with them last year. Again, probably it's an opportunity too, to also give targeted attention to that group of practitioners in education. So that from very early, we are exposing the teachers to be tweaking their curriculum and the content of their activities, sessions to children. How can we integrate RJ in every single subject? It's not just a delivery of content, but it is the approach, the mindset of the teacher interfacing with students, or we talk to students, or we solve problems that students might have or we might have with students. So it's also ensuring that at the earliest level, as my brother Stuart would have said, give targeted attention to the earliest group, to the early childhood sector might also be a critical place where we can ensure our educators are exposed to the RJ principles.
I think you're looking at my notes. Restorative justice in the school as a subject area, or break down areas of it and have it be a part of the learning process. It will do well. It will not be taken away or substituting a subject, but to have it incorporated in sub-subject. Like sports. As a country, we are so infused with sports. We could have it in sports. When you look at, I attended a school that is so big on sports, and you'd never believe at times that those boys, before they take the field, had issues before they go out on the field. But that person who scores the goal or runs an excellent leg of a 4x1 is hugged by the very same person that he had a confrontation with. And it is forgotten. That confrontation before is forgotten. So it's to take certain aspects of it, critical aspects of it, and have it fused into activities in the school, that at the end of the semester or the term or the school year, and you do a summary of the subject. So you take that subject and in a very crafty way, you have it in different areas. You can look at it and say, listen, as a result of the very artful way in which it is introduced, it's done. Another way is through the arts and culture within the school. You have role plays, you have songs, you have skits, you have essays, you have art competition that brings it out. And you use it in everyday activities as a learning process. So school is a valuable area to begin the process of making the Ministry of Justice Restorative Division of less work in the next 10 years or so when you start to infuse it that way.
May I just say something? I want to commend you on that question you asked about starting it in the educational institution, like the teacher colleges. From experience, what I've noticed is that those principals, you call them principals, those principals that attend the sessions and those staff, they are enthused because when you tell them about I statement, use I statement to the students. Instead of saying, you boy, you all, you see, whenever we generalize. You always talk, you always misbehaving. And it is not necessarily true. The child might behave disruptive once, but you say always. You generalize, and it is not true. So when we tell them about speak with the students and not to the students, don't generalize. Use statement. Allow the student to realize that teachers are human too, and teachers have feelings, and teachers hurt, and teachers have family. So when you misbehave and degrade, think of my children at home, older than you, and you're speaking at me in such a manner, aggressive way. So we say to them, teachers, principals, use high statement to the students. And you can use it at home, because RJ can be done at home, at school, at play, in every institution. So I just want to thank you for that very important question about doing it in the learning institutions. Thank you.
And thank you for that response, sir. And I know that you, the audience, you would have come with your questions and you would like to ask them also. So we'll be opening up the floor for some questions. But before we do that, so there are many who believe, panel, that RJ is not pointed enough or robust enough to challenge or fix these challenges that are faced in our schools. So the question is, how can schools balance restorative practices with the need for clear rules and accountability, ensuring that boundaries are maintained while fostering that supportive environment that RJ promises?
Schools represent a place where our nation's children spend the most time as children. Every day, for many hours. Schools also represent a structured environment that, unfortunately, many of our nation's children do not have. It is for this reason as a ministry and as we have a responsibility to maximize the opportunities available to our nation's children. Where there is no structure, we can't complain and say the problem is at home. We have a responsibility to create that structure. We have a responsibility to ensure that within that structure, the concept of justice prevail. So this is not just to teach, but how do we demonstrate and live by these principles? So it must be reflected in how we treat with student infractions. That the infraction must, what we do to treat with infraction must be kind of in line with what is the infraction itself. We have to make sure that our children, when they observe how we speak to our students, that children don't get the perception that, oh, is that one favorite? And oh, I am not liked. These are things that we can do that don't cost any money. So again, how do we create that enabling environment that would suggest to our nation's children, this is a kind of structure, this is a kind of space that we must start model within our homes when we become older and have our own children. Super important. And that's why, for me personally, and I know oftentimes as educators we say, but our role is just to teach. And everything else must be fixed by whoever else needs to fix it, including parents. I understand that reasoning. But I'm also saying that if our children spend the longest time with us in an environment of structure, with individuals who are so trained to care, then we too have a responsibility to impact the lives of those boys and girls in a positive way. We must at least ensure that our environment is giving the children the choice to choose, being exposed to structure, caring, loving, supporting environment versus what many might be exposed to, and then making a decision to say, this is not what I want to be or what I would like to become. Because I'm seeing in an environment the kind of model behavior that represents what I would like to be and to do when I become older. So our role is absolutely critical at school, to create that enabling environment, to give every single child the chance to do well, irrespective of their social circumstances.
I just wish to say that children are growing up in a very toxic environment. And as adults, as leaders, we are here to save children from themselves, save people from themselves. Schools ought to be a safe space, but unfortunately, we are seeing, quote unquote, the opposite. Just like the RJ centers. RJ centers are a safe space where persons can come and speak their truth, speak honestly from the heart, and there's confidentiality. But sometimes, a child will come to school and expose his or her hurt, and then the entire class and sometimes the entire school knows about what happened. So in that, the environment is not right. We need to make it right, fix it. It is not impossible to fix it. And as leaders, not talking about government now, leaders, we are all leaders in our own rights. Those parents, you are a leader, you're leading your children. Pastors are leaders, they are leading congregation. Teachers are leaders, they are leading students. So we are all leaders. We need to set the right example. And when we see something going wrong, we need to nip it in the bud. We don't have to get aggressive. Use the tools that restorative justice is offering. A way to talk it out, and as you say, not fight it out. Thank you.
School and parents with students is a partnership. There are some schools that you actually sign a document, a handbook, and in that handbook it has the rules and the expectations of the institution that must be carried out. So the introduction of restorative justice in school should be and can be considered, Mr. Troop, as a part of that handbook. Could make it not necessarily mandatory, but suggestive, strongly suggested and advised that restorative justice practices or exposure be a part of the school handbook, where there's this expectation that each semester, each term, the Ministry of Justice will come into schools, through your ministry, of course, and have sessions that are almost mandatory and practiced. And then there's a measurement, a reporting of it. So what that does, this becomes institutionalized in the school, and therefore that question will never be asked whether or not you're being effective or not.
Thank you. Very, very, very insightful. Very, very insightful. And some really good strategies we have noted as well. So we're going to be coming to our audience, and I'm sure you have your questions. And so what you can do is just to put your hand up, and we'll have the roving microphone. We have a lady across to my left.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. While we try to fix the situation in our schools, in the classrooms, I am thinking, what can we do to those vendors and persons who are outside the school gate, who sometimes are the ones who students will come in, they will hold their knives or their sharpened combs or their instruments for them. And if something happens in the schoolroom, in the school, with their peers, then they resort to those instruments which they use to harm the other students. How do we treat with that?
Mr. Troop, you want to take that one?
I don't want to generalize, because we also have, in many schools, have positive relationship with their vendors, where their vendors are an important part of the safety apparatus of the school. Because when something goes wrong in the community, the vendors would have informed the principal or other key members of staff. So for me, to the person who asks the question, it is about relationship, and it's about ensuring that there is a system of accountability. And if they are in violation of the same, what do we do as a school community? Sometimes the response is not just a school response, because there are also other agents of government. Yeah, because they are in violation of other things. And those agents of the state also need to respond. It speaks to, though, another issue that we need to be concerned of. Because the violence we see in our schools are normally a reflection of the violence in our communities. We have to find a way to improve the quality of the relationship between community and school. There was a time, there was a time when certain things would never happen because the school is right there. And this is a community now. There was a time when if there was conflict in communities, it would never happen in the vicinity of a school. Now we see, when you look at the media, children shot as they are being transported in a public vehicle in the vicinity of school. Persons are being targeted and executed in the presence of children at school. So it is suggesting, my friend, that yes, the vendors are an issue, and I'm saying there is a place to treat with that, but the deeper issue is, how do we ensure that there is this community-school relationship to ensure that the community itself is not creating and contributing to the mayhem we are seeing in school? And the justification sometimes, and we see it in our music, and when you hear artists say that their music has nothing to do with the behavior of our nation's children, because those children have parents, you understand the kind of crisis we are in. The ease at which our children can consume so much negative music and nothing. So sometimes children say, as adults, we are hypocrites too. Because we are expecting of them what we as adults are not prepared to do. How do we hold those kinds of issues and those kinds of people accountable for the kind of mind and the kind of mentality that our children are embracing because of the exposure to these things? It's up to us to make a difference.
Any other?
Good afternoon. I know this question would have been answered somewhere along the way, just to know maybe. But it was said earlier, we are to inculcate values that show how children should act. You would agree, however, that because of the mass importation of culture, it is harder for parents to influence their children as they used to, based on what we are faced with now, globalization, where parents and children are simultaneously being impacted by foreign culture. How do we get our parents to continue to parent according to traditional values when these cross-culture are actually impacting the parents themselves because it appeals to them?
Mr. Jacobs, I'm going to let you take that one.
Thanks for the question. You know, we should just go back to basic. We're trying to, so many times we're trying to invent or to create this utopia. And in trying to do so, we go too far left or too far right when it is right in front of us. No longer are parents encouraging to sit around the table and eat. So everybody has a device in a different room, eating in the room. And so you slowly become strangers to your children, and your children become strangers to you, but they become friends to those that are cartoons and so on social media, and to the music that they're listening to. If we can put aside quality time on weekends, on a Saturday, on a Sunday, and just have that Saturday soup with the family, that Sunday rice and peas and rice with chicken around the table, the basic, because like Dr. Troop, I grew up in the inner city, but the crime around me did not at any time at all affect me. In fact, sometimes I didn't realize it was happening, because I had a single mother, a simple domestic helper, who ensured that we sat and ate together, if it's even a finger banana. And what that did is you run out of gravy in your plate, my brother or my sister would give me some of their gravy, and you crush it and you eat the banana. Those simple things. And we try to find an excuse that we're busy studying and working at the same time. But how many of us in that car, in that space, is having a conversation with our friends on the phone about adult things, with the parent around, with the child around, listening to everything that is happening? How many times we are at home on social media, watching the TV, watching adult things with our children there because we just don't find the time, or we think we don't have the time? It is to go back to basic. How many times do we say to ourselves, okay, I'm not someone who has the time, but I'm going to take you to ice cream once per month, and you simply have a conversation. We are allowing globalization to come into our space. We have a right. We have that distinction of having the keys to that door, not to let it in. But we become so seemingly wanting to change our culture too much to fit the pace of what is happening around us and not happening. And so I want to use a sports analogy. When you're running a 4x1 race and you're in lane 4 is your lane, you know. If you're going to lane 5 or lane 6, you are infringing in that lane. And if lane 4 or 5 comes into your lane in lane 4, they are infringing your lane. You simply stay in your lane. So your lane is that you are a parent. And you are going to be a parent who's attentive and engaging to your child or your children. You don't do that, you are going to end up in serious problem. Globalization cannot come into your globe unless you allow it in.
Thank you so much. Very insightful. We are being given the wrap-up signal. We're going to take one more question from the audience, and then we're going to ask our panelists to give us their parting shots. 30 seconds.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Dwayne Brown here from the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information in the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division. Now, while I can appreciate that our ministry has a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Justice and rolling out the restorative practices training within schools, but there is a very big issue in going into the communities where communities want the training, however, they do not have the resources to facilitate these trainings. It's a 2-day training, and you have to provide refreshments, venue for the community persons. There are also instances where youth clubs, police youth clubs, do not have the budgetary allocations to facilitate these trainings within the clubs and the various organizations within the communities. Probably it's not a question, but how would you advise the Justice Ministry on facilitating these community engagements or facilitating the restorative practice trainings within the communities?
So, you know, sometimes we hear of these issues, and the first thing that comes to mind is cost. When the Ministry of Justice reached out to the Ministry of Education for this partnership, that was the very first thing that came to my mind. But we can find a way to work around these things. So, for example, in the earlier days, Ministry of Justice would have taken us to a hotel, and we spent several days, and it was fun. But in the context of budgetary constraint, we took the RJ training to school. The children would have been at school. The teachers would have been at school. And oftentimes, the parents, when they are invited, want to be there. The facilitators, we are not paying the facilitators to come. Ministry of Justice cover that cost. So the real cost to us within the school would be to make the stakeholders available in space for the intervention. We would ask the school if it is possible within their budget to provide the refreshment for the parents. But if they can't, when children come to school, they come with them lunch money. So they will just take the break to buy lunch, and those children who did not have refreshment is provided. I think the same principle applies to communities. Community groups reach out to RJ, Ministry of Justice, and the RJ facilitators will go to community to deliver in their local space. And so the cost, colleagues, is not a significant cost. This is an affordable kind of arrangement. If you ask me sometime what might be the challenge with the community, sometimes the volatility of the space. And that's why we are happy to use our schools, and we will even make our schools available if a community group would like to do the training, but they don't have the location outside of a school, because that is a part of school-community relationship. If a structure called school exists in community, the community can reach out to school to say, can the space be utilized? Now, it might not be now for schools during the school day, so this might be a weekend kind of activity for the community to access school as a venue for training, but that is very possible.
I just wish to say, in addition to what Dr. Trooper just said, where the communities are concerned, we use the churches, and the churches bring out the citizens in the community, not just the members. They bring out others in the community, and the church will offer the refreshment. They don't pay anybody. They just may get some water, something liquid. So it is affordable whereby persons can come get the training. I think the hardest part is to encourage the people to come and spend 2 days. But it don't necessarily have to be 2 consecutive days. It can be 2 weekends. So it is workable and it can be achievable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists. And in addition to that, the RJ branch is quite flexible to work with you in offering these training. Just reach out to us, depending on the situation. We'll have that conversation with you, and we will see how best we're able to facilitate it. Now, we're up on the lunchtime, and then so we're going to ask our panelists in 20 seconds to just give us their parting shot. Restorative justice in schools, creating safe learning environments.
Encourage your children to be peaceful human beings by practicing it, showing it, and every single day you get the chance, hug them, tell them you love them.
Ditto, I would just say ditto. Encourage your child or children. And where the school is concerned, it's a safe space. So academia need to move forward and use restorative justice, because one thing I can tell us, or remind us rather, is that it works and it brings peace, it brings healing and fairness.
Restorative justice in school is a result of a partnership between the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. Partnership works. Let us all join together, partner together in making an impact, a positive impact on the lives of our nation's children. They are the future.
Messieurs Troop, Coward, Jacobs. Let us, the audience, give them a round of applause for our panelists. And so we just want to summarize what you've said. We've listened to you. You would have suggested including the RJ principles into the school's curricula, also exposing teachers in training to the RJ principles through their courses, and parents, this is critical, getting back to basics, right, Mr. Jacobs, to the traditional parenting strategies. Thank you so much for being an amazing audience. Thank you for joining us. Any closing thought? Any closing?
Right, so I thank you two panelists. You guys have been wonderful today. So I know that there are many more questions that were not asked, but I'll encourage your audience, if you have additional questions, then you may field those questions at rj@moj.gov.jm, and you will receive a response. At this time, we would love to invite Miss Jamie Shevans, our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Grace Ann Stewart McFarlane, to
and
present.
the keynote speaker.
Thank you. And our keynote speaker as well, who will be receiving a token.
To present to these handsome gentlemen that we have here.
So you're under receiving.
Okay,
right.
so I'm on this side.
Thank you, PS. We'll now invite Ms. Sharon Bettencourt to make presentations to Mr. Richard Troop, a member of our panelists.
Mr. Troop, what can we say but thank you so much for making yourself available to us today. Thank you, sir. I want to say thank you for taking charge and reminding us about what true parenting really and truly is. Thank you so much, sir.
Right, we'll now invite Ms. Jamie Ann Shevans, Principal Director of Social Justice Division, to make a presentation to Mr. Coward. Right, so now that your minds have been fed, it's time to feed our bodies. And happily, we have already started. So we will be served at our tables. So do enjoy lunch, and we'll be entertained by the band after they have eaten. Thank you.